if I were to pay someone to be a developer to do this would be thousands and thousands of dollars development costs. It would have taken weeks or months to build. I did it in my pajamas on a couple of Saturday mornings. It was that simple and really fun to do as well. Hello, and welcome to AI Curious. My name is Jeff Wilser. I'm a journalist, I'm a human, and I am curious about AI. So recently I did a solo episode on my thoughts on Moltbook, of how all of these AI agents were posting on a social media site that's only for AI agents, no humans allowed, and how wild that was, and all the posts about humans must be purged and destroyed, and what it says about the future of AI. And the feedback I got from listeners is that we want more of that. I'm hearing that you want a little more of my actual thoughts on AI, the space, how it's evolving, not just me interviewing smart guests. So going forward, I'll try to inject a bit more of that into the AI Curious bloodstream. And related, the other week when I was leading a workshop to help a construction company figure out their AI strategy and to help them uncover and explore AI use cases, I got this question a couple of times. Okay, Jeff, but what tools are you using? I'm embarrassed to say it just hit me that I never really talk about that stuff on this podcast, which is absurd. So these are probably things people kind of want to know. So today we're going to break format and I'm going to share 5 tools, or at times way of using tools, that I'm using right now that I think could be applicable for most listeners, regardless of your job or industry. Now, this is not at all comprehensive, and I'm not including some of the super basic and obvious stuff that you are no doubt using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini for like normal chatbot stuff. You're there, you get it, so we're not going to belabor that. And there's also a ton of AI I used for podcast production. I'm not going to belabor all of that stuff. But things are moving so freaking fast right now in the AI tools world. I mean, even compared to a year ago, 2 years ago, 6 months ago, things have sped up. Specifically as OpenClaw and Claude Code and ChatGPT 5.4 with their increased coding, like so much has changed. And this seemed like a good time to share a bit of my own kind of vibe coding adventures and what else I'm up to and where I think this is headed. Yeah, so the agenda, 5 tools-ish, 5 things I'm doing, and what I think this says about where we're at right now. All right, the first one, the biggie, Claude Code. Now, in some ways, this episode is maybe like 4 months too late, right? Obviously, Claude Code has been around for a while, and I'm guessing that a fraction of listeners here are Claude Code ninjas. You've built wildly advanced AI agent apps that have automated your entire workday or launched your own side hustle business that's minting you money while you sleep. And maybe it's even making you a protein-heavy, macronutrient optimized breakfast. Fantastic. You will chuckle at my relatively modest and newbie adventures in Claude coding. But I'm guessing the bulk of listeners and viewers are certainly aware of the vibe coding trends and maybe poked around a bit and played a bit, but haven't spent that much time coding or building. Whatever camp you're in, maybe there's a third camp, it's like, what the hell are you talking about? What does vibe coding mean? Whatever camp you are in, I'm hoping that there's still something here that I think has some insights on where this is all going for business and kind of life for all of us. So we kind of have to start there. Let's start with Claude Code. A while ago, I confess, I was like, I'm feeling a bit behind. I hadn't explored Claude Code as much as I should. I'm like, I'm someone who's AI curious. I'm a little behind here. So I went down a rabbit hole, and it is so easy to do. For anyone who hears the word code and is like, I'm not a coder, I don't need a code. Neither am I. I have never written code in my life. Well, that's not true. I think when I was like in 6th grade or maybe 5th grade, this is going to date myself, but give you some time frame here. I think like Ronald Reagan was still in the White House. I think we had a class where I used some like DOS command to change the color of a screen from like blue to red. That was the last time I did a line of code back when Reagan was president. Since then, nothing. So, and I wasn't even really sure what kind of project do you build. So I kind of thought about things that'd be useful. I'm like, okay, I know that I, as someone who now speaks on AI at conferences, those opportunities are often pretty ad hoc. You hear about a conference, you get invited to a conference, often word of mouth. I'm like, there's got to be some like really awesome database of all these events that would make sense for me to speak at. That doesn't really exist. I'm like, all right, let's create one. So what was started as kind of a toy, or almost like as just a proof of concept, like, hey, Claude Code, can you help me build this so I do something? Quickly, like within 20 minutes, it's describing what I wanted to build. And also I was very clear, hey, I don't know, I'm not a coder. I'm barely even like, I'm the whole vibe coding thing. I haven't done it yet. Be gentle, help walk me through this. And again, if you're already deep into Claude Code, you got this. For the rest of you, the process can be going a number of different ways. For me, it's as simple as with Claude, or you can use ChatGPT for this as well now too. You basically say what you want to build, and it will freaking build it. It is that simple. And then you iterate. And it's really fun. It's almost like, I haven't played video games in years and years and years, but it kind of had that experience, the dopamine hits of, ooh, new level unlocked. I just did this cool thing with Claude. So what started as a bit of a toy, the more I got into it, I eventually iterated and built a thing I don't think exists anywhere. Eventually, we, using AI agents, developed a system that found 1,800 different events out there that might be a fit for me to speak at. And it's a little more sophisticated than just doing a search of AI conferences. That will only get you so far. I fed it a ton of bio background on me, AI topics that interest me, AI topics I speak on, where is there a fit? So it then evaluated like literally 1,000+ events, domestic and international, and scored each event on different attributes ranging from proximity to where I live in Denver, but also to fit of content. Also, frankly, to fee, what conferences likely have a budget for more of a speaker's fee, and various attributes like that. And it didn't just give me a CSV. Well, it started there, but we eventually iterated, and I got it into a insanely robust UI that I could slice and dice by industry, by various scores, and so on. And then we built several layers on top of that do further research in each event to learn more about it, to help me find the person to reach out to introduce myself, to speak at that event. I pushed it on going deeper to find other events it didn't originally surface. I subscribed to a service that gave access to possible event organizers and contact info. And I used AI agents to do all kinds of machinations of organizing this data, because some of the data was extremely clunky and kind of was very manual to get through to, okay, surface, all right, who do I contact? what page is it on. I have agents doing all of that stuff. And then eventually does the analysis of comparing what my own background is to what the event is to, if I want to give me a targeted outreach plan as well. I am confident that no other tool exists in quite this format. If I were to pay someone to be a developer to do this would be thousands and thousands of dollars of development costs. It would have taken weeks or months to build. I did it in my pajamas on a couple of Saturday mornings. It was that simple and really fun to do as well. I'm actually leaving some features out because frankly, I can't spill all the goods here, but I'm proud of this tool. And it's not a toy anymore. It's actually part of my workflow. And it also is, I think, a great example of my North Star when it comes to AI. And when I speak to businesses and leadership about how to ethically, responsibly use AI, and that's AI to empower, not eliminate. I love the idea of using AI to give yourself more capabilities, to do more. I just didn't have the time or bandwidth to go through and aggressively pursue always different opportunities. With this AI injected tool, I now have a far greater grasp of the events out there. And it's a lot easier for me to connect to those events. That didn't just like cut away what I'm doing and automate things and like lower costs. It expanded the pie, right? So AI to empower, not eliminate. That, by the way, is my keynote speech that I will be speaking at these events. And so it felt like a very fun way of learning by doing. To be even a little more detailed and mechanical at this, to give you a better sense of, okay, why can't you just Google conferences? So yeah, there's the obvious stuff like AI events, but I also want to speak about AI at non-AI events. So for example, I've now been to multiple construction companies who've been awesome, and I've had half day and full day workshops with them and their leadership team on AI strategy and injecting AI in their business. And that was fantastic. I really enjoyed learning about the unique challenges of construction and helping them figure out how to incorporate AI into their workflows. So I'm like, all right, I don't just want to speak at AI conferences. I also want to speak about AI at construction conferences, right? So finding this kind of master list of all types of different industries and events, and then the best way to reach out to the folks in charge of those events. Again, there are kind of sort of different versions of tools like that you can pay for that help professional speakers find events. But frankly, I'm confident what I built is stronger than what you can pay for right now. So, and I think that it is abundantly clear to me, though, that eventually almost every business will be building tools like this, will be building agentic systems like this. Now, in some ways, that's not news. That's not news to me. I've been saying on this very podcast for over a year and a half that, yep, AI agents are coming. They will transform businesses, yada, yada, yada. Okay, it's one thing to say that, and I believe that, but seeing the power of me as a solo operator building this tool and how it can add so much value to the business and me not being reliant upon spending some boatloads of money to some SaaS company, that gives me even more conviction of how transformative this will all be. And weirdly, I think my newest hot take is that for as much hype as there is with AI right now, and boy, is there a lot of hype. And also, I also get and appreciate that AI popularity. They've done surveys on approval ratings, if you will, or what's the public perception of AI. AI is underwater. I get that the favorability of, I saw some recent survey that AI is less popular than ice right now, right? So I guess my very podcast, this podcast is at risk of cancellation. Fair. I get it. AI is not super popular. And I get there's so much hype. My hot take is that I actually think many people, if not most, including folks who think about AI a lot, might still be underestimating just how transformative this will be to virtually most workflows. I really believe that. And again, it's not a value judgment. I'm not saying good or bad. Again, back to the premise of this podcast. It's not about good or bad, right or wrong. It's sensing this is important and I'm curious and want to learn more. Okay, tool number 2, personalized news. I kind of remember this in a way, it harkens back to the roots of RSS feeds. And remember Google Reader, right? With some kind of clever tweaking, you can sort of craft your own personal news feed through sources that you liked. One of my pet theories, and I spoke about this a bit at Davos in the episode that I released recently from Davos, that I think that eventually, good or bad, right or wrong, we will live in an era where much of our news is personalized, hyper customized. You get kind of types of stories that you want. We already have some crude version of that. There's obviously right-leaning news and left-leaning news. Sure. But this will get hyper granular. Eventually, we'll all have our own personal Walter Cronkite who will give us the types of stories we want with the slants we consciously or subconsciously want. And do I think there are massive problems with this on a societal and individual level? Of course. It actually terrifies me. I think that it is a big, big problem I don't know how we solve, that in the future, we could be living in a world, that's my movie trailer voice, in a world with fractured news. How will we know what is true, right? So we will be living, I think, to some extent, in a post-truth world. And that frightens the hell out of me. We're already kind of there. That, I think, will get worse. So to clarify, this is not a yay, thumbs up endorsements for hyper fractionalized, balkanized news where we're not speaking the same language. We can't agree upon shared objective truth. I do not like that reality. However, I do think there's merit in getting particular niche topics just the way you want it. So in my case, I wanted a news feed. Again, this is close to clarify. I'm not give me all politics news in this format. I didn't go there at all. That's not how I get my news about the world and current events. But what I do want is a hyper-focused, hyper-customized daily digest, a primer about AI news and developments. So I used a recurring task in ChatGPT to every morning at 6 a.m. Denver time, give me a briefing that does X, Y, and Z. And I was very detailed about the tone, the format. I want to kind of Axios bullet style things. And the different categories I want. I want news on enterprise AI adoption. I also want news on the decentralized AI space. I want to hear about fun tools bubbling up and on, right? I want wildcards. I want, if there's wacky fun stuff with AI, serve that up. I want a summary of the key conversations that are happening in the AI space. So I gave it all these different kind of buckets of things I wanted. I give it word counts, instructions, and so on. Now, to clarify, this is not replacing my current news consumption. I view it as an addition, and I still read my Axios AI newsletter. I still listen to the daily AI brief. Shout out NLW. Thanks for all of your great work, and so on. But it's an extra layer of customized news the way I want it. And I can see it's being useful for anyone in whatever your field is to creating this kind of daily digest of industry-specific news. And again, I'm sure newsletters already exist like this, but also the cool thing is it's not just a regurgitation of other news things out there. I also ask it to be hyper-specific about how each news item relates to what I'm doing and what I'm building. I even asked it for, hey, suggest an episode of AI Curious as a result of news story XYZ. Or even ask it, hey, who would be a good podcast guest based on news story XYZ? So it's not just the news, it's also connecting the news to your own particular situation, right? So it's easy to imagine whatever kind of role you're in, feeding it context about your role, and then asking for an analysis of how that news relates to you. Is it something that could inform this third quarter project you're doing or whatever? So I have the daily updates. I also have a weekly analysis that tries to have a wider lens, look at what's shifted in the week in the space. And I'll probably toy with having a bigger monthly analysis as well. Tool number 3, and I'll keep this brief because you've probably heard of it, might have played with it, and it's kind of in the gray area of it's like maybe a little obvious, but I think it has improved a lot and worth noting. NotebookLM. Now, you've likely heard of NotebookLM as a year or so ago, maybe longer, burst onto the scene as from Google, it let you basically create a podcast, an awesome podcast, what easily sounds like a better podcast than mine, annoyingly. And you can upload anything, a PDF, a book. You could, I haven't tried this. I'm guessing you could put a receipts from your grocery store and it will pop out this chipper engaging podcast about your grocery store receipt, right? It got a lot, it went viral, big story. I think that actually undersells the tool though. It is so damn good at synthesizing so much information from a variety of sources and quote unquote modalities, right? Different types of formats. Crucially, that includes YouTube because Google owns YouTube. And I'm a weirdo. I'm a weirdo that, well, for many reasons, I'm a weirdo, but I'm also a weirdo in that I don't really enjoy watching YouTube videos. So I just don't want to watch a 20-minute video usually, right? So this though, you can just feed it in the links to videos and it will extract key information. Now, again, ethically, is that exploitative for the YouTube creator who you're not watching a 20-minute video, but you are gleaning insights? Fair question, open question. So putting ethics aside though, from a pure utility, you can give it so much context and ask for insights. And let me give you just one way that's useful for me, and it might spark ideas in your own world. So again, this speech that I give on AI to empower, not eliminate. I've spoken to hundreds of leaders in the AI space. I have a ton of insights and nuggets and all kinds of little mini stories and vignettes. But I realized, you know what? There's also probably lots of cool little fun anecdotes from this very podcast, AI Curious, and I want to sprinkle some of these into my speech. And I knew I can remember some off the dome. Some stuck with me for sure. And yeah, when I skim the list of podcast episodes, some more come to mind. But my memory is not encyclopedic. So I just fed NotebookLM two different things. First thing was the outline and thoughts on my speech, and not asking NotebookLM to write for me. We'll get there later. I'm still a writer. I'm still driving that bus, but I fed it the outline. And then second thing was a trove of transcripts to his podcast. And I said, hey, there's a big bucket of transcripts, and here's a speech. Please curate and drag up little insights and quotes and vignettes and case studies and examples that might make sense for me to sprinkle in the speech. And I didn't ask it to just pick one or two. I wanted kind of a long list that I could then use my human judgment to curate. So again, this is AI to empower, not eliminate. I did not have the time to go through, and certainly I couldn't listen to all 125 and counting episodes of AI Curious. Also, no one should have to in one binge do that. That sounds terrible. No one should also read through all my transcripts. Boy, that sounds like a really rough afternoon or 7 afternoons. But you know who can do that really well? NotebookLM can, and many of the other AI systems, right? So I asked it to romp through all of my transcripts and serve up this kind of menu of possible nuggets and anecdotes that could work. And I'm thrilled with that. Again, Claude could have worked, ChatGPT could have worked to some different extent there. But what really sets NotebookLM apart is its multimodal ability, especially with YouTube. And also, I think folks are sleeping on the fact that many of these things can now integrate directly into Canva and other tools to actually then create directly from these tools. So that gets to tool number 4. And bit of a cheat, it's not actually a tool, but rather a way of using tools. And that's what I call polymodel. Folks often ask me, Jeff, what's better? ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whatever. And basically that changes almost by daily, right? So part of my thought is, if you are at the bleeding edge of AI, if you are a researcher, if you are like a hardcore coder, then yes, I can see when you want to squeeze every last inch of edge, it could make sense to like constantly switch models. And for writing, I use Claude, and for this, I use this. And like, I get that. Totally respect that. But for like 95% of people, the models update so quickly that what's ahead on Tuesday might be behind on Thursday. So to some extent, whatever model and interface, or for on principle, ethics reason, whatever reason, go with a certain model, like, I don't think you're losing that much compared to the other frontier models. That's just my opinion on this. That said, I do think there is merit to using multiple models, or what I call polymodel. And there's no need to like lock in and commit to only one. Now, of course, there's benefits on having longer context and memories in one model. So maybe ChatGPT knows your entire history, so you're loath to lead that. Now, of course, there has been a subplot in the last few weeks of how do we port memories from one model to the other. There are easy ways to do that, so that should not be a roadblock for you. It's not difficult to actually kind of bring your memories from one model together. But the point is, you don't really have to choose. What I have started doing is actually using 2 or 3 chats at the same time. And if I have kind of a thorny analysis question, I will ask the same question to both Chat and Claude, sometimes Gemini, every once in a while to Grok if I want like real-time Twitter sentiments. And the fun part is, if it goes the same, by the way, everyone, I hope you're using thinking mode or Opus, whatever the latest version is. It's worth the extra whatever compute it costs, if it means spending $20 a month or whatever, the thinking mode is so much better, just to state the obvious there. So in thinking mode, or the best mode for each model, I ask the same question. And then the fun part is, when I get the response, I will then put the other's response into it. So I'll ask Chat and Claude a question. When I get Claude's response, I'll feed it into Chat after I got Chat's response, say, thank you very much, ChatGPT. That's helpful. I also asked Claude the same question. Here's what Claude said. Can you please update and revise your analysis accordingly? And what usually happens was funny. They're actually very polite and respectful. They'll be like, they'll compliment each other's work, and they'll say things like, I have to say, ChatGPT was stronger than my response here in issues XYZ. However, I think I gave a more robust response with respect to blah, blah, blah. It's almost like a very civil, like respectful debate, like back when debates were respectful and civil. And so, but usually you'll see 70 to 80% kind of overlap in consensus. And that's a useful signal right there. Like, okay, this might be more, battle tested. And then sometimes the blind spots that you surface from one model can actually spark the other one to revise and think of something better. So I highly encourage kind of poly model approach. And finally, tool number 5. It's not really a tool, but it's a way of doing a tool I think is underappreciated. And that is voice context and writing in your voice. And I'm just going to briefly share an experiment I did, which kind of blew my mind. I don't know why I haven't done this before, partly because I'm not trying to get AI to write like me that much. I'm still doing most of my own writing, if not all of my own writing. But there are some things, right? Some things. I'm like for example, like a deck for sponsors. I don't really want to write this sponsor deck. I just don't. I'm sorry. I just don't want to do that. But I kind of have to, right? And so there are things like that. I'm like, all right, can we kind of go to the darkish side for things like that? And so obviously, of course, I know this, I teach this, the importance of feeding context, giving examples of how you write. I'm sure you've heard that advice. What I'm going to say though is like quintupling down on that, not just giving an example email or two, or an essay you wrote or whatever. What I did in Claude was start a project where, of course, in a project, there's shared context across that project. And I fed it not a few things. I fed it about 17 or 18 years of my writing. I fed it excerpts, actually, no, the whole first, a draft of the first book I wrote in 2008, excerpts of books I've written throughout the years, articles I've written from New York Times, Glamour, Wired, GQ, across a range of categories. I sent it articles in AI I've written, tech stuff. I sent it some podcast transcripts. I fed it a screenplay or two I wrote years ago. I went to town. It came back with something that I found unsettling, but awesome and unsettling. Unprompted, it gave a career assessments of how I've divided my career into 3 different eras. As an aside, era 1 is kind of the funny, smart guy, more like jokey stuff. Era 2, more long form, nonfiction, storytelling. Era 3, thought leader in AI space. And it showed how my voice has in some ways been consistent for 18 years, kind of like surfaced tics of mine. It surfaced not just structural things, but habits I have of setting it, how I set a scene, how I end paragraphs. What are some of the Jeffisms it identified that have been true for years and years? And then when it had this deeply rich context, I gave it some prompts of writing like me. boy, oh boy, did it deliver. So I get that not everyone has like 17 years of professional writing to ingest as to LLM as a corpus, but you probably have a lot more than you realize. And to the extent that you do want AI to quote write like you, I'm not saying you do, maybe you don't, but there's a lot of benefit into pumping in a ton more context you think is useful. Now, again, I get the ethical question. I get the other questions of, well, do I want to kind of like feed it all of this stuff? Because am I then giving away my IP? But in my case, this is all like writing already out there. It's already, I know for a fact, 3 of my books, at least 3, had been used for training data. So that's already out there. Like my IP has already been gobbled up by AI training. So I'm like, well, it's already out there. I'm not like adding to the problem right now. But I do understand the reservation folks have of that's fair game. But I do want to share the power of feeding it lots and lots of context. On a business front, again, I know companies are already doing this. It'd almost be like weird if you're not doing it at all. But I still think that many companies are probably under baking this as far as not giving as much context as you could. I would err on the side of like pumping in all kinds of written documents of whether it's marketing stuff, whether it's product descriptions, whatever, just like the more context you can give it, the better results you're going to have. Okay, those were my 5 tools or tools adjacent thoughts. Again, not comprehensive, but hope you found this interesting. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to our show's producer, Jasper Chua. Thank you to you, dear listener. If it's your first time at AI Curious, please subscribe, rate it 5 stars, all that good stuff. Thanks again. See you with a proper guest next time. Take care.